let's open it up for questions. If you can put your hand up and we'll get a mic over to you. Yeah. Just say who you are, where you're from.
My name's Aditya. I'm from Marico Industries. You spoke about disintermediation and you're in the agency business. How do you see the future for your business?
Well, I wouldn't, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I mean, I basically haven't sold any shares ever since I started in 28 years ago. So the answer is all of my net worth is tied up in WPP, and people think I'm crazy, or many people think I'm crazy, but I don't think so. So I'm biased. So any answer I give you is going to be totally subjective. I think because the world is getting more fragmented, the media world is more fragmented, clients become more confused, more concerned, more questioning, and they need more help. On programmatic, for example, you are seeing some clients saying they want to take it in-house. I think that's going to be a temporary fad, because I think that after a year or so, quite apart from the fact that I don't think good people will want to work just on one client like we see with in-house agencies, I think they're going to find it too complicated and too difficult to keep up with, so they'll become more reliant on outsiders for it. So our Xaxis platform, I think, will continue to flourish. And this is an uncomfortable thing because I'm sharing a stage with a frenemy and a partner, as well as somebody who, not personally but as organizationally, is regarded by some of our people as being a threat. I think there is a growing realization that Google, and this will be Facebook and Twitter, are media owners, masquerading as technology companies. They always get upset when I say it, but I say it because I do believe it. And we have no vested interest. They have a vested interest. They have a vested interest, which is to support and develop, quite right, there's nothing wrong in it, their own platforms. Right? They will support DoubleClick. They will support Atlas. We have a neutral platform. We don't care. We created that. We bought 24/7 Real Media. We were the poor man's. They get very upset when I say this at 24/7. We were the poor man's DoubleClick. We competed in the DoubleClick auction. We competed against Microsoft in the Atlas auction, which now is a part of Facebook. The remnants of Atlas ended up at Facebook. We competed, but we couldn't get the wind up. We were out in the first round. I think you paid $6 billion or whatever it was. I mean, that was more than our market cap at the time. So it's, and that's actually highlights, we're capitalized at $27.5 billion. They're at $400 billion. What is Facebook at the moment? I always look 160? I mean, we're just a pimple on the elephant's backside. And it's so that's difficult, but I do think clients are starting to understand that. And it's not, I don't mean that in an offensive way, because I think it's just a fact of life. And then I think the transparency thing is important, because they don't know how the algorithms work. We do have opacity in our business. So I think it will be okay. Now, having said all that, the equilibrium that we've established can get moved out of balance again. There can be a new factor and a new force that I don't know about, that you don't know about, that Google doesn't know about, that Facebook doesn't know about, that comes into play that knocks the whole thing out of kilter. So it pays to be paranoid. And again, as I said in the previous session, the geographics you can figure out. India is going to be a fabulous place, in my view, to do business. And when we acquired J. Walter Thompson in 1987, we picked up as a part of that a wonderful business in India, which has continued to be a wonderful business in India. And Group M, which was originally Mindshare, which was originally the media departments of JWT and Ogilvy here. We picked up Ogilvy in 1989. Again, but more by luck than judgment, we ended up by 1989 with a whacking great business here in India, with not a dissimilar share, although we've grown our share. So we were extremely fortunate. So we've got strong businesses in the geographic parts of the business, and you can figure that one out. The big the big challenge is to figure out technologically what the hell's going on. I mean, again, I said this in a previous session, but so I had a session this afternoon with somebody who's in the digital space of significance. And he just showed me some of the latest things he was doing, and they're in test here in India in 30 minutes. And I sat there thinking to myself, I didn't say this to him, but he'll now know what if he listens to this. I sat thinking to myself, God, can I really understand the implications of all this stuff? It covered e-commerce, it covered direct relationships with the consumer, it covered smartphones and telecommunications, the whole ball of wax. And the scary thing about it, to your point about, speed, is it's coming at you. So like 10 years ago, you might be able to cope with it a little bit because it's coming at you a little bit slower. This stuff is coming at you simultaneously. So it's not one thing coming at you, it's 4 or 5 things coming at you. So it's quite overpowering. I did actually feel, I have to admit, at some point in that 30 minutes, as if to say, Christ, this is a little bit, becoming a little bit difficult. Huh? So, and I'm not a technologist, you may be. I'm not an engineer, you may be, and therefore you have an advantage in trying to figure it out. So it is tough, very tough.
This is Nitish Tipnis from Nissan. My question is to do with your core businesses in acquisitions. For a man who started by looking at below-the-line advertising before you made your acquisitions with Walter Thompson and then the rest is history. Is it the right time for us to look at Martin Sorrell making large investments in acquisitions in the digital medium now?
Do you mean as agencies or clients?
As agencies.
Do I think it's the right time? Well, let me put it like this. I mean, it's our EBITDA is about £2 billion, call it $3 billion. Our free cash flow is about £1.4 billion, call it over $2 billion. And we've allocated of that about 300 to 400 million pounds, so roughly a third, to small and medium-sized acquisitions. The market, if you're a public company, doesn't like big acquisitions. I shouldn't say this publicly, but we do 36 acquisitions in the first half of this year. If you amalgamate the 36, it's not big, but it's not small, right? So human beings being what they are, they sort of, it's a little bit strange, but that's the way that goes. So first of all, because the market doesn't like big ones, I don't want to do big ones. And the second reason is the pricing on small and medium-sized ones is much more attractive. So we can do things which are probably inherently more risky because they're smaller and there are more of them, but which we consolidate into our established brands. And really, some people look at our company and say there's 150 companies. There aren't. There's 15 or 16 verticals. So I have 15 people basically who are responsible for companies who report to me in one way or another. And we graft them on. They're not standalones. We don't elongate the horizontal span. Now, the other thing that's happened, which is to our advantage, is I think some of our competitors, in an attempt to try and catch up, have made some big mistakes. You can see it in their published numbers. One of them, for example, dropped 11% in China in Q4 of last year. The same company dropped 13% here in India in Q1, I think it was, or Q2. For that to happen, something's going wrong, which my guess would be in both cases, in both countries, expensive acquisitions were made which have gone wrong. So, and they had to do that in order to catch up. So it comes back to your question about whether it's the right time. I think if you keep your discipline in the small, and I'm creating competition by saying this, if you keep your discipline in the small and medium-sized area, you can do things which are just as effective, but not pay crazy prices. Because I think some craziness, partly because it became a sexy area, partly because people had to catch up. 3 areas: Brazil, India and US interactive or internet or digital, where it got out of kilter. Now, we've seen some coming back of that. But by and large, you know, if somebody, I wouldn't say large, but if somebody put a small or medium-sized internet company, which we thought had the right pricing and had all the right characteristics from a qualitative point of view, brand reputation, technology, people, analyst views, journalist views, etc., you know, we would do it. But, you know, ironically, the era of real risk-taking inside WPP was more in 1987 when we bought a company 13 times our size. You know, would I buy a company 13 times our size now? Probably not, because I have too much, you know, this is the old fart speaking, because, you know, too much at stake. Whereas then, it was easy. You know, we doubled our share capital and took over a company 13 times our size. I went from 14% of the company to 7%. And it was a no-brainer. If you could get the margins right inside JWT, which we did, it made sense. So in answer to your question, I think it's not a bad time, but I think you have to be discriminatory. I don't think you should rush in big, it would be my view.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Let's up here. Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you stand up so one can see you?
Hi, I'm Rajiv Dingra from Watt Consult. We are a digital agency in India. My question was more about taking on from what you mentioned about the technology experts required for the future. Now, traditionally, advertising has been more about the communication and the creative expert. How do you rebuild an organization as large as yours with the kind of footprint that you have and create new leaders with technology expertise and make that marriage happen?
Well, the answer is with difficulty, because the traditional businesses, you know, agency businesses have been regarded as being craft businesses, not scientific businesses. In fact, you know, money, numbers, science, data, you know, the thing that creatives in agencies hated, for example, still do, is Millward Brown's 8 score on copy testing. You know, if the client doesn't give it an 8 score, it never gets run. And that drives creative people. You know, how can you reduce a view on creativity to a number, they would say. And, you know, there's, to some extent, I have some sympathy with that. However, the world has changed. I mean, the conversation I had just previously, which was really at the heart about whether, you know, life was qualitative or quantitative, whether it was an art or a science, and to which my answer is it's both. That may not be the answer that people want to hear. Some people may want to hear it's an art. Some people may want to hear it's a science. But the answer is it's both. And I was at a conference last week, I said in the last session as well, with Clay Christensen, professor at Harvard Business School, and Roger Martin, who's the third best management thinker, Clay being the best in the last poll of the 50. And they both were saying business has become too quantitative. We become too finance and procurement orientated, and we have to become more qualitative. They didn't say, forget about cost. They said, you know, whatever's left brain and right brain, I can never remember, there are two parts to the brain, be both. So there are, first of all, we are not in the technology business. Although they're media owners.
We are in the technology business and you're in the media business. Who use
technologies. We apply their technology to our business. And we refine the tech, we apply it. We don't originate it. Because how can we, at 26 billion or 27.5 billion, compete with 400 billion or 160 billion or Alibaba at 200 billion? So what we have to do, to the heart of your question, is attract more data scientists, more programmers, more engineers. And you know, I think we're starting to see developed countries.
So the thing is, what if mobile internet, of course it is surpassing broadband internet, and if it continues to do so, and you know, broadband kind of saturates, is it still good for the digital growth, or you know, or it has to be, the dependency on broadband has to be much higher?
The question is mobile still good for digital growth?
Yeah.
I think,
as opposed to only broadband's dependency, or?
No, unequivocally, yes. I mean, if I look at our relationship with Google, the two big growth areas are video and mobile search. And what's interesting about video, as an aside, is in high penetration TV markets like Brazil or Italy, where people have been using or been watching, because of Globo's predominance, or Mediaset's predominance, or Sky's predominance, television is 60% or whatever it is, 70% of the market. Video has been very strong. And the same thing applies to mobile search. So I think, without any doubt that you're on the cusp here with, for example, with the introduction of Xiaomi, which will, I don't know whether Xiaomi will be as successful in India as it has been in China. People tell me not.
20,000 units, 5 seconds.
Yeah, but
That's pretty good.
Leizhong manages the market.
No, I know.
His genius is
Right.
it's only internet delivered. He tickles.
Same thing here. Same thing
He
here.
tickles the demand, right?
Yeah.
And he creates. He has his 500,000 engineers going online every Friday. And by this crowdsourced software, I mean, it's turned into a game. So I think it's 10 o'clock on a Friday morning or something. All the engineers are sending the improvements to the Android operating system that they want to see, and then they pick and choose what they want to implement. I don't know whether they're going to run the same thing. If they did the same thing here,
They're building an engineering center in Bangalore,
Oh, well.
but they just launched a couple of months ago.
but there are competitors here that Xiaomi doesn't have in China. I mean, they've underpriced Apple, they've underpriced Samsung.
Micromax, Carbon.
Yeah. So you've got suppliers here who are different. But I think, without a doubt, that's where we're all going to go. I mean, I never thought I would watch the World Cup on a tablet or on a smartphone. The answer is you will. With high-def screens, I mean, effectively you do. So it's just as good an experience, even on a small screen. I mean, what I saw this afternoon, which will be coming to India shortly, I mean, it's amazing. So yes.
Martin, there are many questions on the web. I'm just going to ask one of them.
Yeah.
What are your views on the viability of building brands using digital as the primary channel, i.e. without too much use of traditional media in India? Given what you've heard about
There are
Reddit and
examples, Srini, I think we're aware of examples of companies having done it, both in India and outside. I don't think my view is, I don't think you exclude so favorite example would be Ford Focus.
Yep.
They give the car to 12 bloggers for 6 months, and by the time, or influential bloggers, and by the time the car is actually launched, using a bit of traditional media, not on the scale that launches have historically been done at Ford, by the time they've done it, the positive view of that Focus car was incredible. So you'd almost won the game before you started. I wouldn't say at the exclusion, I mean, there are going to be some examples of B2B products in particular, not B2C so much, where the audience is finite and you can reach them individually. You reach that finite audience individually, and I think it makes sense. But I would say there's no reason why you shouldn't start off digitally, but I think reinforcement from traditional media is still very important. So it's like a bit like the quantitative and the qualitative. Do you do online to the exclusion of offline, or even vice versa? Obviously the answer is not. It's a happy mixture of the two. And coming back to the question about what the role of agencies is, the role of agencies is to try and get that right, to plan the media and execute the media in the most effective way.
Great. I think in the interest of time, we're probably going to... Should we take one more? Are you okay with time? Okay.
The man.
Thanks,
Can we
Martin.
combine your two into one?
Okay, I'll ask my question and I'll pass it over. This is Nishant from LinkedIn. So it's really great to hear the influencer post that you had live.
Are they a
which was
media
awesome.
company too, Martin? LinkedIn, what's your view on them? Because they've started selling ads, Nishant's been out there.
I'm a LinkedIn influencer. Yeah, I think they are.
There you go.
I think they are.
Yep, we have
You're
many
all in the
different
same
businesses.
boat.
There you go.
So, going back to the conversation, Rajan, you were having around, you said the sexy phase is over, and Rajan was talking about how the focus on performance and
Yeah.
transactions has
And
kind of,
ROI, yeah.
and ROI has gone very fast, well, too fast. Could you talk a little bit about how you're advising brands in terms of building sort of relationships over time and measuring the impact of, that relationship over periods of time, whether it's through content marketing or other means?
Yeah. Do you want to get the other question? We'll try and finish it off.
So, hi, this is Gyan from Dainik Bhaskar. So my question is, the most typically in the print on the broadcast, the advertising money has gone to the publishers largely. But now with, in the digital, large part of the money is going to the technology companies or media companies. So should the content companies have to become a technology company and what kind of a technology they should do so that they still remain in the...
Okay. All right, let me try and finally try and answer those because they're not easy questions. On the how do we advise? This is where it gets quite difficult because I will get myself, I shouldn't have asked you to ask this question, into deep doo-doo as a result of this. I still believe that the most powerful online medium is search. It used to be desktop search. I think it's mobile search. So if I look at the 5 legs of the Google stool, for example, display, desktop search, social, mobile, so mobile search, call that, video, 6 legs or 5 legs. I think the most powerful one is still desktop search and mobile search, without doubt, because its effectiveness can be demonstrably proven. The reason that gets me into trouble is when you start to talk about social and video and other areas, I think they're very powerful, but they're much longer term. And they're brand builders. What they're trying to do, and I think this is part of the problem. They go public, this gets me into deep trouble. They go public, therefore the pressure on them is to drive revenue and to drive profitability. Whereas if you look at Mark Zuckerberg's, was it S6, I think it's called, the letter that he wrote with the IPO, he didn't say he wanted to build a profitable company. He said he wanted to build the best social network on the planet, which he has, right? Has already, the biggest nation on the planet. So I do think there's a temporal difference. If you're looking for short-term sales search, if you're looking at long-term brand building, some of these other things are equally potent. When I say this, people get upset with it for the obvious reason, but they don't, I think enough about it or listen to the hard one I'm saying is they're very powerful, as powerful, but one is short-term. So one is like promotion. It's not like promotion, but you understand what I mean. And one is like creative advertising that builds brands over long periods of time. So if you come away from this and put on your LinkedIn page or the Facebook page, I heard Sorrell, and I think what he said, some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't, some of it makes sense. That's probably a reasonable result. If you're going to say he's a moron, that doesn't build WPP's brand or so. On the content thing, we have made 2 spectacularly successful content investments. When I say spectacularly successful, at this point in time, we haven't realized them, neither do we wish to realize them. One is Fullscreen, which was started by Peter Chernin, 100 YouTube channels. Peter has done a deal with AT&T, which is one of our clients, and he will basically put Fullscreen together with his new venture with AT&T. It's public knowledge, there's a $500 million fund to develop content for AT&T, because with DirecTV, increasingly they will want content. We have asked specifically not to be cashed out as a result of that, but to be rolled in that investment. We still have to negotiate the agreements, but we will want to do that. So that's one thing. Vice, we made our investment at a valuation of $350 million. A few years ago, we owned 11%. Rupert Murdoch came in at a higher valuation with 5 or 6% about 6 or 9 months ago. Time Warner was supposedly looking at the company at a valuation of 2.2 billion, not buying the whole company, but buying part of it, a significant part of it. I go through that because I think that's where the opportunity is. And I also think, the things that Group M is doing are two very interesting things. One is Xaxis platform, digital media planning and buying, and the other is Group M Entertainment. In the UK, in the last 3 years, we have become the biggest commissioner of entertainment programs in the country through Group M Entertainment. So we are commissioning more programs. We don't make them, we commission production companies to make it, but we come up with the concepts and we come up with the ideas, some of which I'm very proud of. I mean, some of which I don't even know that we're doing, and I'm sitting washing the box or the tablet and it comes up Group M Entertainment, and some of the stuff we do is really, really superb. So I think the content area is a fantastic opportunity, certainly with the pressure that we see from finance and procurement, which is a fundamental point, on agency fees. We have to find other ways adjacent to what we do, and I think content development, coming up with ideas, native advertising, as some people, which is really just advertorial stuff, is really going to be very important. So that would be my advice for whatever it's worth.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your perspectives.
Thank
Let's
you.
give Sir Martin Sorrell a big round of
Thank you very
applause.
much.